So, welcome to another episode. So, today we have Dr. Larry Waldman on, who has got a PhD in educational psychology. So, welcome to today's episode.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, anxiety then, what's the issue with it? Why are so many people saying they're anxious and, they've got that feeling of future dread? Why is that?
Well, it's a very common problem. The combination of anxiety and its sister or brother, if you will, depression, they often go hand in hand, and they constitute a large percent of the population. It's estimated, at least here in the States at any rate, that in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% of the population suffers with anxiety or depression or both. In fact, they usually go hand in hand. Many depressed people are also struggling with anxiety and vice versa.
I've always been told or thought that anxiety is living in the future and depression is living in the past. Is there an element of truth in that, do you think?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's one of Freud's proverbs, if you will. He is quoted as saying that depressed people rue the past and anxious people fear the future.
But again,
That
why is that just a part of the human condition? So, for example, most animals just focus on the present, don't they? They look at, reproduction, eating, defecating, sleep, all of these basic functions that are going to ensure survival. Unfortunately, because of our cognitive ability, let's say, we are in the position where we can look back and analyze the past to help us move forward better, or we can look at all of the potential problems that are going to arise in the future, and again, that could cause issues with anxiety, for example. And from what I found working as a coach as well, is that most people who are anxious is they're looking at the potential future problems that could arise. Oh, if I, like a snowball effect. Oh, if I don't, if the business doesn't succeed, then maybe I'll have to move house or not be able to pay my mortgage, and the kids can't go to private school, etc., etc., etc. And they play these negative spirals out in their mind all of the time, which obviously is going to cause some sort of anxiety about the future. And why try and live the pain? Like, let's say if that pain is going to come, what's the point in living that pain longer than you need to, as the Stoics say?
Well, you're exactly right. The great brain that Homo sapiens have is, of course, wonderful. We have accomplished, as a species, so much and so on. In fact, interestingly, my wife and I just returned less than a week ago from Egypt, and we were just amazed at what ancient man could produce. On the other hand, we sometimes use this great skill, this ability to ponder the past and predict or try to think about the future, sometimes to our disadvantage. Now, this, of course, doesn't happen early on. I mean, this starts to happen, as we get a little older, like preteen or thereabouts. I mean, if you got two boys or little kids, 3, 4 years old, playing in the sandbox, one doesn't say to the other, "Oh boy, did I have a terrible day yesterday?" Whatever. My mommy got mad at me. No, they're not talking about the past. And the other one is saying, "Well, yeah, I've got to go to a new babysitter tomorrow, and I'm really scared about it." No, they're in the present. They're playing in the sandbox and having a good time. Now, of course, over time, this begins to change. And yes, you're exactly right. People are, many people, as you noted, are basically doing what I refer to with when I was in practice. I refer to this as stinking thinking, where you're basically sabotaging yourself. Where I've got this upcoming thing, and I hope I don't fail. I mean, that's a real trap, like, saying that to yourself, because that's pretty much what's going to happen. Or if I fail, it would be terrible, things of that nature. And so if you negatively coach yourself, and I use that term sometimes as well, yes, you can see where you're heading. It's not good.
100% love that. And a real advocate for self talk, self belief, self image, all of those sorts of things. And if you continually see yourself as, oh, I'm such a bad person, I'm always stressed, actually become more like that. The whole Gollum effect, as they say. So, how do people go about actually trying to change that? Is it just as simple as trying to flip the script, as it were, instead of stinking thinking, as you've called it? Maybe it's perfume thinking, something that smell cologne thinking, whatever you want to call it. That actually we start to think in positive ways. Oh, actually, instead of thinking, well, what if this doesn't go right, and I could end up on this negative spiral. What if things do go right? What's that going to look like? What if I'm aiming at certain things and I'm excited by it? And yes, you might not hit those things, but at least you've got a positive aim that you are aiming towards. There's no point, as I said, in extending the pain of, if it does happen, okay, you'll deal with that when you get to that crossroads. But again, it comes back to what we said earlier. Unfortunately for humans, we have the ability to look into the future, which has its positives, but also has its negatives, doesn't it?
Very much so. Absolutely. Yeah. What if? That's the banner. What if this should happen? Look, what if, living in a daily life, we take risks all the time. I mean, think about it. Every time you eat something, turn a light switch, uh, get in the car, and so on. I mean, these are risky things. And if you're going to tell yourself, what if this cereal is poisoned, or what if this switch has got a short in it, or what if I'm in a terrible accident, and what if I'm not accepted? What if I'm spurned, et cetera, et cetera. All those things, of course, can make it pretty miserable. And what starts to happen, it's not just psychology, or after a while. I mean, this begins to impact your sleep. So now you're not sleeping very well, and now you're many times, if you're very anxious, you don't feel like eating. Your stomach is upset, so now you're not sleeping right, you're not eating right, and this really takes on some real serious consequences.
100%. And the thing is, people have this stress. Okay, people have stress. Whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever you want to call it. But that then turns to cortisol within the body, and then you've got a situation where you are more prone to illness as well. It affects your sleep, which obviously is that whole cycle as well. You need good sleep to recover, repair, both physically and cognitively, of course. So it's a real damaging thing to continually be in this situation. And look, I'm not saying that things are easy necessarily, but there has to be a way that people can, as we said, flip the script and get out of this rut. Because the more you do something, the more likely you are to do it in terms of habit. It's a psychological habit, isn't it, as opposed to a physical one.
Yes, right. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of ways to address it. In some instances, you can take a biological approach. And of course, that's the arena of the psychiatrist, if you will, where some people address their anxiety with medication. And there are medications that can help the person calm down and so on and relax a little bit. Now, you want to be careful with some of these sedative type medicines because they are addicting. Now, typically, what happens is if you see a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, and truth is, at least here in the States, the majority of people are not seeing psychiatrists, they're seeing their GP, their general practitioner. Uh, and so what typically happens is they get prescribed some kind of sedative on a short-term basis, along with a longer acting, non-addictive antidepressant. Even though they're anxious, they're using an antidepressant. And so the sedative kind of gets you over the hump for the first 2, 3 weeks, and then you taper that off, and then the antidepressant is something you stay on for a longer period of time. For some people, it's just about forever.
Yeah, it's indefinitely, but I think that's one of the issues that I have with it. And look, just to caveat here, I am not a chemist, GP, a psychiatrist who administers drugs. But for me, one of the issues with these type of drugs is, okay, there is extreme circumstances where there is severe issues with the brain, whether it's actual physical trauma, CT and stuff. There's no denying that. But a lot of the time, these drugs are there to mask the symptoms of an issue rather than address the root cause, because it might be that psychologically there's something that you've not quite figured out in your own mind that's causing this anxiety or the way that you're thinking. And although chemically those drugs may calm you down, isn't it better to potentially, and this is the question to you really, isn't it better to potentially try and figure out the root cause of something through CBT or therapy or counselling or seeing a psychologist, coach, whatever it's going to be, journaling in a way that we can try and address why we're in a specific situation, or even look at yourself as if you were someone else. If you were your best friend, what would you be telling yourself to do? How would you behave? Are you exercising enough? Are you living in a cluttered environment, a dirty environment? Are you doing a job that you don't enjoy? Are you, if you think about the wheel of life, health, career, finances, relationships, are you even hitting any of those? If you're not, it's probably a strong reason why you are anxious, upset with your situation. And I think those, although we're talking about the negatives, I think sometimes those symptoms can have a positive, because it's showing you that I don't like my environment, I don't like maybe where things are going, and maybe it can force you to sort of drive you to action.
Well, you're absolutely right. And now, of course, as a psychologist, I'm certainly not an advocate for medication. On the other hand, I mean, if the client comes in and they're wringing their hands and so on, it becomes pretty apparent that they're not going to be, well suited for talk therapy, at least at that time. So the medical approach might be appropriate in that instance to at least allow the person to become more amenable to this psychological approach, which of course is my or our forte. Now, once and yes, and not just because you're prescribed an antidepressant doesn't mean you have to be on it for decades. If you start to learn how to manage your anxiety and so on, you can with the doctors, of course, support, you can taper it off and go on your own. Now, there's a couple of psychological approaches here. We've already talked about one pretty thoroughly here, which psychologists refer to as the cognitive approach. And basically, that has to do with, what are you saying to yourself? What's your self-talk? This is again that stinking thinking. And many people, frankly, don't even realize it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm in the first session as I'm interviewing a client for the first time. I'm making little dash marks on my sheet and so on every time they make a negative reference. And sometimes I'll say, if I, I'll say, Doris or John, we've been talking for 50 minutes here, and you have made in this time 22 negative comments about yourself. Well, okay. So what would we expect? And so forth. So obviously, in this case, we need to change, the script, as I call it. Now, another approach to this psychologically is sometimes to take a step back and take a look at where we come from, the analytic approach. Now, for instance, if you came from a family where one of your parents were alcoholics, let's say, and on a regular basis, there were huge blow-ups with, frying pans being thrown and tantrums being had and so forth, that could cause someone, to grow up, with this notion that at any minute, at any time, something could explode, and I have no control of it. And so occasionally, and what is called an analytic approach, is more useful, at least to get the client to become aware why it is they're in this mix, if you will. Because remember, as children, we come into this world naked and naive, as I like to say. We don't know what's right or wrong, good or bad, and so forth. And so a child in living in chaos, as unfortunately many kids do, comes to learn, if you will, to be on guard, to be in a state of fight, flight, basically all the time, because that's how things work in their life. And so, that's one approach as well. You mentioned exercise. That absolutely. Data has clearly shown that exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, is very useful in helping to control your system and keeping this fight flight down. I'm also a yoga instructor, and I talk about this a lot. We're trying to be a little more meditative, get in touch with things and so forth, and so on, and keep yourself at rest, if you will. At peace is a
Yeah.
better word.
I think for me, it's the whole chicken and egg situation, because people say, I I don't feel like exercising. I don't, how can I exercise when I feel this way? But that's actually more reason to do so, because maybe you feel that way because you haven't exercised. It's the chicken and egg situation, and unfortunately, people aren't disciplined. Regardless of how you feel, you should be exercising. Well, I think every day, but okay, let's be more reasonable, because people do have busy lives, 5 times a week. I would say, and not just your general walk around the block. That should be That's a joke. That's not even exercise for. Okay, let's just be fairer. If you've got ailments and stuff like that, okay, that's different. But I'm talking for a regular healthy human being. Walking around the block is not sufficient as for exercise, really. You know, you need to
Well,
be
it's
doing
start.
longer than that. Okay, I mean, around the blocks like 600 meters or something. You need to be doing more than that, I would say, to keep it healthy mind. I know. Okay, look, if that's all you can do, fine. Just being outside in nature is going to give you. It's going to be better than nothing, of course.
Mhm.
But I think there needs to be a little bit more rigorous exercise, at least a few times a week, to get your heart rate up and endorphins pumping.
Well, even some what I refer to as some reflective breathing, things like just like inhale through the nostrils, hold, and then blow it out. Hold, hold. So simple things like that kind of breathing, rhythmic breathing, can be also helpful. Yes. But again, yeah, certainly it's almost impossible to be running on a treadmill, let's say, and so on, and be anxious at the same time. Does oh, brain can't do that. So, if you're really getting a nice workout, then you're most likely not at that moment feeling anxious.
100%, and I think that's a strong thing with anchoring as well. I spoke to a client once, and they were saying, "Oh, I've got anxiety and stress and all these sorts of things," and her routine was to go and sit back down on this exact seat in the sofa. And I'm like, you do understand that your brain, because you felt like that for so long, every time you sit in that chair, you've now anchored that feeling to that chair. Little things like even moving the room around and sitting in a different chair and you know doing a different thing. Like you said, if you're doing something that's out your comfort zone, you're skydiving or and I'm not saying everyone should go skydiving. I'm not saying that. You're on the mountain, you're scrambling, mountain climbing with ropes, whatever it's going to be. That's going to ensure that you are ultimately present, gets rid of any of that future or past situation. So, question is, could you do more of that first of all? And secondly, as I said, maybe change the situation. Think about where you're feeling most anxious. If it's at work all of the time, maybe the industry or the business is not right for you. Maybe the office space, maybe you prefer to work from home. Maybe it is at home that you feel anxious because you need social contact. And a lot of the time, it's about the introspection to work out what is it exactly that makes me think, feel, act in this particular way, so that we can look at addressing it. It's like with a business. First thing they do is they look at, revenue, income, clients. Why are we here today from 12 months ago? Positive or negative? What have we done well? Oh, we got these contracts. Okay, great. What did we not do so well? Okay, cash flow. We spent too much on advertising, or whatever it may be. And we are our own business also.
Right. Yeah. Uh, right. Change. Exactly. There's another school of psychology, if you will. We've talked about the analytic. Well, we talked about the biological, of course, with the medication part, with the cognitive, and so on, and the analytic. The other perspective is the behavioral approach, and which you're referring to, and that is, making behavioral changes. There's an old behavioral maxim that goes like this: it's far easier to behave your way into a new feeling than to feel your way into a new behavior. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do. Okay. As an example that you mentioned a few minutes ago, the client says, well, I'm not working out because I don't feel like it. Okay. So what they're saying is that when I somehow feel like I would go work out, then I will. Well, we know that's going to be a long time before that happens, if ever. In my case, and I exercise regularly, at least 4 times a week. Not and I do teach yoga as well. I admit there are some mornings that I wake up and I go, at this very moment, I don't feel like going to the gym at this very moment. But what do? I go anyhow. And 15 minutes later, because there's a gym downstairs from where I live, and I'm on the bike, and now I'm going. How do I feel about being there? Good, you see. So what did I do? I behaved my way into a new feeling. Okay. Rather than waiting until I felt like doing it, which probably wouldn't happen at least that day. So, making good choices. Now, sometimes what we may have to do is break it down. Okay. Let's say, I mean, I've had patients over the years who like had terrible car accidents, and they're that's it, not driving, never mind, can't, okay. And I said, well, will you work with me? And he said, yes, okay, fine, all right. So the first step I have them do after is to go into their car, sit in it without even turning the engine on. And they look at me, that's all you want me to do? I said, yeah, that's all. Because when's the last time they got in the car? Not since the accident. Well, all right, now they're in the car. And just breathe. Just like breathe calmly and so on. Okay. And I want you to do that until I see you next week or so. All right. Come back. All right. Next step. Did you do that okay? Yeah. Was that all right? Yeah. Fine. Okay. All right. All right. Now I want you to make sure the garage doors open, so on. And I want you to turn the ignition on. Just sit in the car with the car running, for 10 minutes. Out, make sure that, the fumes are out. Okay. And come back. How did that go? Okay, fine. All right, all right, all right. I said, all right. Now what I want you to do is get in the car, start it, put it in reverse, and just back up your driveway and go maybe forward again and just back up once or twice. Think you can do that? Yeah, I can do that. Now, do you see what's happening?
It's the
Of course.
association, isn't it? It's the power of associating. Instead of associating with the car all of the bad that happened, we're trying to remold it to say, look, the car, don't be scared of the car because of that's happened. We're trying to rebuild the confidence of the car doesn't equal death or accident every time. And I think that approach is awesome. The slow, incremental association to get rid of any sort of confirmation bias, if you like, that the client has retained since the traumatic event.
Right. Behaviorists call it systematic desensitization. Fancy name. But, basically baby steps, if you will. Where we're taking, small steps toward the goal, and so on. When you say just go do it, well, no. Like when parents throw kids into the deep end of the pool to help them swim, they traumatize them. Why not start in the shallow end and get them comfortable in water, you see, and then gradually, slowly, move them to the point where, okay, your feet don't touch the ground anymore, but that's after they're comfortable with the situation, you see.
100%. You see this even with dogs. Dogs that have been rescued, or are naturally reactive. They have to reintroduce, instead of saying, look, all dogs are aggressive, because every time they meet a dog, they might be like, "Rah, rah, rah." They have to keep the distance to a certain level where, let's say 10 meters, and when it gets to 9 meters, the dog starts going nuts. So we have to hover around the 10 for a little bit, maybe get to 9 in a little bit, and start doing it in a way where it's a whole classical operant conditioning, isn't it? To put it in a nutshell, where you need to basically try and reinforce a positive behaviour rather than a negative behaviour, either by
Absolutely.
giving a reward, taking something away, taking away something bad, or whatever it's going to be, negative, positive reinforcement, etc. So I think that's, if we understand that with dogs and animals and kids, it's weird that we don't always understand that with ourselves as well. And look, I appreciate it's difficult because you are the box trying to look at the box from outside, and that's the hard part. That's where specialists come in, where they can assist and act as a mirror for you to help fix yourself. It's like, if your car's fixed, okay, you might be able to fix it yourself, but where do you normally go to? A mechanic. A haircut, where you could probably cut your hair yourself. Like, I could probably pull my hair and cut it, I suppose. But I go to someone who knows what they're doing, because why would you not? And people go to people like that for cars and haircut and roofing and stuff like that. But one of the most important things in your body is your mind. In fact, it is the most important thing, and people don't always want to go and see them. It's bizarre, really.
Well, you're right. And so what we're saying here, if we are looking at this behavioral view, is that okay, you have a goal. Maybe that right now scares the heck out of you, like maybe public speaking. Okay, that's a big one. A lot of people are afraid of that, or even getting into a group, and so on. Some people are uncomfortable with that. All right, so what are then ask yourself, what are some of these preliminary steps, okay, where you can start, being comfortable, right? Maybe, just learning to speak to your kids, start there, or your spouse, start there, and so on, and gently move forward until you reach the goal. I've had clients again who were became agoraphobics, afraid to just go outside due to again a catastrophe outside the house, be it an assault or a car accident or whatever. And again, use the same approach.
It's,
Um,
it's mad though, isn't it? I tend to find that a lot of old people, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, of course, that even from not primary experience but secondary experience, i.e., reading the newspaper, they've seen all of these attacks going on recently, and they're like, oh, I'm scared to go outside because of what you read on a piece of paper. And I know that thing actually probably happened or whatever, but it's not directly affected you, and you can't really live your life like that, because you could read about, as you said, car accidents. Oh, how many car accidents happen a year? Oh, I'm not going to drive. I'm not going to fly because of what happened at numerous occasions. I'm not going to eat this certain food because someone died from salmonella poisoning. And you could do that with anything. I'm not going to um, put lights on because I've heard that this one time the lights set alight and the house went on fire. It's just, you could do that with anything, literally anything. I could get electrocuted right now by touching something, unfortunately, because it's got a live wire. But it's it's just such a negative way to experience the world, I think.
no question. And as I said, as we said earlier, I mean, yes, like it or not, life is taking risks. I mean, as I said to you while we were chatting, I just returned from a trip to Egypt, Middle East. Are you crazy? I mean, and so on. And yet there were thousands of tourists there. Some of those temples were packed with so many tourists you couldn't even turn around. But yet there are many more people probably saying, "I'm not going there. That's nuts." Well, okay, but you make a lot of it. You make up your own fears, and
It's confirmation
what?
bias, isn't it?
Yeah,
Whatever you read is that's in line with your current thought process, you're going to accept, and you're going to reject things that don't. Like, for example, that the people who said that to you, oh, I had a great time. if they've already got a cognitive bias that, oh, it's bad to go to the Middle East, your one little comment, they're just going to say, oh, well, he was lucky. It was just a one-off for him. Whereas
Mhm.
someone who already accepts that it's probably safe will be like, yeah, that's another person that said it's sound. That's another person that said it's safe. So I think confirmation bias is a really interesting thing, because I prefer the Bayesian way of thinking, Bayes theory, where we get new information and we adjust our thoughts moving forward rather than sticking to this, confirmation bias, where, let's say I did have a bit of a 50-50 approach with going to Egypt or Middle East or whatever, and you said, oh, I had a great time, loads of tourists. That is the newest piece of information with a massive uptick, saying it's positive, and that will then change my opinion. But unfortunately, most people do stick to their guns. Oh, I've always been told that, to become a millionaire, you need to be a crook and rip people off. Really? What about all the people who have built massive businesses that their products you use on a daily basis, that are useful products, Fairy Liquid? I don't know why that came to mind, but a product that you use every day that's important. It's a really negative way of thinking, and that's limiting beliefs, isn't it? I think it all sort of ties in together. Anxiety, limiting beliefs, and self-talk. It all sort of merges into one. And it's the whole saying is a small leak can sink a big boat. And it's sometimes we've got these small leaks in our mind, and then we get to a point where we're like, "How did I get here? I'm in such a bad way. What do I do? I can't even go out of the house," which is horrendous if you think about it in that respect.
Right.
And then it's a case of trying to reverse engineer your way back to a good time, if you like, back to an older version of iOS.
Right. Uh, the old expression is, I'll believe it when I see it, actually is false. What is true is the reverse of it, just what you're talking about, and that is, I'll see it when I believe it. So again, if you get information that's inconsistent with what you believe, you're not seeing it, you're not accepting it, you are discarding it. And
Yeah,
that's why we have people who are so divergent on various views and
it's
and and can't get together and try to find some harmony. It's a problem.
it's the whole Baader Meinhof phenomenon, isn't it? Where if you're going to get a brand new, I don't know, red Ferrari, or that's probably a bad example. Let's say you're going to get a red BMW, and you start seeing them everywhere. Or you're going to get a boxer dog or a German Shepherd. You start seeing those things everywhere because it's at front of mind. You're looking at this new business that came out. You finally got this new product, and you start seeing the product everywhere, or adverts, or whatever it may be. And that's the Baader Meinhof phenomenon. And if you have this negative view on things, again, you start seeing that. You've got a negative view on the morals of people. You're going to start seeing that everywhere. If you've got a positive view, oh, that person was really kind, that person was kind. So again, as humans, just to sort of steel man what you've just said, is that we see first a lot of the time, or we think first before we experience it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. It's the mature, open-minded person who's able to take in information that might be inconsistent with what they originally thought, but they're at least willing to entertain it, think about it, and that's that's what we need to do.
So, is there anything that we've maybe not covered with regards to anxiety? Because I think we've covered quite a bit of ground in terms of the different aspects, some of the negatives, how we can look to fix it. Is there anything that you can think, well, actually, yeah, we've probably not covered this particular part, or I think we need to go a little bit deeper into a particular part of anxiety on the whole?
Uh, we we've covered pretty much the what I refer to as the four schools, which I think are critical in this. The biological approach, and then the analytic or Freudian approach, and then the cognitive approach, and then of course the behavioral approach. Um, and there's no one saying that you can only do it one way. No, in fact, a person can opt for a combination of approaches. As I said before, if you are, so anxious you can't sleep or eat and so on, well, maybe a brief approach, a brief medical approach might make initial sense. And then once your body's under control, now you can start thinking and take some of the other tacks, if you will. Um, but there clearly are ways to do this. Of course, I think one of the main messages we want to send is that, if your anxiety is to the point where it's interfering with your life, that's the number one sign that you need help and get help. See someone, at least your GP, perhaps, whether he or she prescribes meds or not. And then that, if the GP thinks, well, maybe meds aren't necessarily, but certainly some counseling would be, then, I'm sure he or she has resources, can send you to some therapist, and so on. But that's the point. The point is it's treatable. It is. Anxiety is definitely treatable. And so you should seek help. Um, and and I've, over the years of over my 45 years in practice, I've helped numerous people that had anxiety, overcome it. With,
So are you still practicing now, or not?
no, I'm not.
So can you give us
I
an example of one of the most interesting cases without giving away names, because obviously confidentiality, or is that again an invasion of privacy or confidentiality? If you can make it more generic.
well, I one of the sidelines that I developed in my practice was to work with personal injury attorneys, which relatively few mental health providers uh, during my practice time, and even to my knowledge, even today, are not doing. At any rate, yes, I met a number, quite a few, clients, that had another form of anxiety, which is, post-traumatic stress disorder. Clients that had some kind of, significant event or series of events, um, and were, significantly stressed. Auto accidents for sure. Work accidents, yes. Assaults, and so on. And yes. And so helping them understand, what they were going through and that they were not going crazy. I'm glad you thought about that too. Because a lot of people don't want to seek help because they think, wait, am I nuts? I don't want anyone playing with my brain. I don't want anyone thinking I'm going to be put in a loony bin, all that, malarkey. No, you're not nuts. As I said, I think at the outset here, around 20% of the population is dealing with this stuff. So, you're in good stead. But you should get help. Some people, will drink. That's their panacea. Well, no, it's not. Or take pills that aren't prescribed. Some people do very weird things, or unhealthy things, trying to cope with their anxiety. And frankly, all they're doing is making it worse.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our
You've got
vices.
one.
We all have, we all have our vices. But as you said, I think that using that for escapism is going to do nothing but make it worse. Especially if it's hard drinking. If you have a
Absolutely.
pint or two, maybe just to relax, it's probably a bit different than caning 2 bottles a night for a 6 month period. Obviously, it's not going to have a positive effect cognitively as well as physically over that period of time. Is there any? So, if you could say one sentence to someone who's going through this, apart from get help, that's not allowed. Another sentence, because that would be number one, surely. What would be a sentence you would say to someone that's going through a form of anxiety, depression, PTSD?
Well, you took away my number one thought as you were saying it, which was, of course, to get help. But then the second message is, it's normal. Okay, you're human. Okay, and it's treatable.
Love that. So, if anyone wants to reach out to you about anything, I know you don't practice anymore, but maybe if they've got questions or anything, where can they do so?
Well, I'm not in active practice any longer, but I still do a number of things. First off, I have a series of books that I've written, and they can check my website, which is topphoenixpsychologist.com, and it lists everything about me and my books and so on. I also do a lot of public speaking to the community and also to mental health providers on providing therapy and how to develop, manage, and market a successful practice. So I do that, and I coach young therapists in some of those endeavors as well.
Awesome. So, well, thanks, Larry, for being on the show. I think we've covered anxiety pretty well there. A few gems of knowledge or nuggets for those out there. And as you said, it's not just for people with anxiety. Even you can help with people who are actually on the other side, practicing with obviously with your experience over the years. So yeah, thanks for being a valued guest.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Larry.